Canadian Footy Corner.
Hello, friends, and welcome to yet another episode of Canadian Footy Corner. I am your host, Pierce Lang, and I'm joined, as always, by John Peckett. And it's a day that I think a lot of us are going to remember. Being able to come down off of that high from last night. What are your thoughts now if you're able to finally digested everything that happened last night, John, with Canada's big 2-0 victory against Honduras?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know where to start with that, but I think some people might look at the table and say like, oh, Honduras doesn't have a win yet. They are kind of struggling in this cycle, but at the same time, you have to look at the bigger picture here. And we're looking at a team that's gone in with confidence to a stadium we've never actually had a win before, to a city that we haven't won in since 1985, a place where in past cycles, like the dream has died. And you come in with a performance like that where everyone did their job perfectly, like everyone played so well, and then you have these two moments of brilliance on the goals, like individual efforts that just were beautiful. So I mean, it was a joy to watch on my end.
I know you're pretty excited about the fact that Jonathan David was able to make such a incredible play. Like, we have guys who can do that now. Like, crazy. And not just Liam Fraser making that pass, but the fact
I was
that
about to say,
bring it down.
Don't leave Liam out, because that was just like a pinpoint, like just like a bullet, beautiful pass. But then it still took some. It still needed a great control to bring that down at that pace. And that first touch with his chest, that just all the speed comes off the ball and just pops up right in front of him, and the little touch with his head he touches it twice before he shoots. And then that was the icing on the cake. And it was just it was brilliant. And I don't know if you guys saw like the clips of Alphonso watching along, but his reaction was the same as mine. That was wild.
Yeah, it was certainly one of the best goals, I think, as a Canadian fan, we've seen from a national team player. Obviously, the Davies one from earlier in this cycle, and there's a few, but they're few and far between. I don't know, as a longtime fan, I'm not used to the spectacular. Do you know what I mean? Like, not at least from our men. Like, once upon a time, we used to.
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, sorry.
Once upon a time, we used to see spectacular goals from our women's team. Now it's a lot of penalties and like little squeaky goals. But now, it's good to have someone in the lineup for either side here, really. But obviously, the focus being on the men, it's just wild. Like, who?
Well, yeah. No, all I was gonna say there was that on top, all I was going to say there was that even to look at goal one, which I know it goes down as an own goal, but Tajon's individual effort to create that was something to watch too. Like, just keeping the ball in, it's about to go out. And then the step overs look like he's playing FIFA, just swirling the skill stick around it, and then into the box, and then the defender can do nothing but just try to get in the way, and it ends up in the back of the net. But that effort as well was, to have Tajon playing at the level he's playing right now is also a huge boon for us.
Just so many dynamic scoring options is the thing. Like, it's just such a dangerous team, and we'll get to it in a little bit, but I was looking over the American roster and the players they had out yesterday in their match, and if I'm honest, I'm not scared at all. Like, I don't see that roster sheet and go, yeah, we need to be really concerned right now.
Yeah, I think coming into this final group, Canada was definitely underrated coming in, but I think the States were maybe a little bit overrated too. Like, they haven't been blowing anyone away like they sometimes do in past cycles, and just they're squeaking a 1-0 win in that was at home too. That wasn't even in El Salvador. They squeak a 1-0 win against El Salvador at home. Twitter looked like it was just doom and gloom at halftime. They people were ready to throw their jerseys away. But I don't know. For Sunday, I think I think Canada's gonna be ready for that. That's a matchup that you relish, right? This is probably the biggest of the remaining results. Where if you can take a win there, that's you've taken almost max points against Mexico and the States.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you talk to many American soccer fans at all?
No, I think just from following various MLS things, I get a little flavor of the U.S. men's national team, kind of when something happens there. So I was seeing a few posts just this many shots and no good shots and this and that. And I'm like, so at halftime it's not looking good. And then Canada came on, so I kind of lost focus on that game. But I had to look after to see if they won. And I was like, okay, well, at least they got their points. Like, they were all complaining 45 minutes ago.
Yeah, I tuned in at halftime to Twitter Space, and I just a lot of apprehension, a lot of negativity, and a lot of the use of the word bro. Like every second, bro, come on, bro. Like, listen, bro. I don't like what's going on, bro. Why would you have these guys out here, bro? It just was so broy.
Well, it's just like in the way the fandom, like, I'm not immersed in it, but the way it kind of drips over into here, there was so much confidence, like, coming into this cycle. And I just have, like, I haven't seen the dominance that I was expecting to see from that team. And even Mexico, like, we can kind of transition into there, where they just squeaked by Jamaica last night in a situation where they're down 1-0 and up a man for half the game, and it takes until the 82nd minute to break through, and they score twice in 2 minutes to so they can sleep easy tonight. But like, they almost blew that game.
If I was American, or if I was an American fan at least, my concern right now would be with that inability to score, because another clean sheet for Borjan, and like, not because he didn't face any shots.
Oh no,
he had the game of his life last night.
The one
I can't remember a goalkeeping performance as strong as that since maybe Tim Howard in 2014 World Cup.
Oh yeah,
where he set the record for most saves. Like, Borjan was just incredible.
Last night, spectacular. The one play where he has to charge out and meet the ball at the 18, where like it's a 50-50 ball there. And then, but even like looking back, like the game against Mexico in Edmonton, that goal line save, like in what it was, 85th minute or whatever, like near the end to preserve. Like, he's been coming up with big moments throughout this whole campaign, and like, it's just like, maybe he's not so much of an unsung hero anymore. People are definitely noticing, but like, he's been lights out.
Yeah, he's just been absolutely phenomenal. So we touched on a couple of our opponents here, and we're going to get to our next guest, or our first guest really, here. It's Eddie Benhin from 613 Sports in Ottawa. He's part of the Capital City Supporters Group, and we just wanted to get someone on with a bit of a local taste of what's going on, because Ottawa there's lots of news, there's lots of stuff going on, but still without a coach, still without a full roster, and the season's just around the corner. So we'll talk to Eddie in just a moment here about what's going on in Bytown. I wanted to say, I can never think of a good nickname for Ottawa, but we'll have Eddie on. Yeah, well, I felt silly saying that. I feel like I've already said it.
Like a TSN broadcast. Yeah.
Well, and like, I can't say Capital City again, right? So we'll get Eddie on to give us the lowdown on what's going on in Ottawa, and we'll be back with that in just a second.
Welcome back, everybody, and what a week it's been for Canadian soccer. But we want to get some insight into our friends over in Ottawa. We've got Eddie Benhin with us, co-founder of 613 Sports and Capital City Supporters Group as well. Now, I wanted to start things off. I felt like so much happened this week in Canadian soccer, but one of the bigger stories was actually on Wednesday when Athletico Ottawa dropped 6 players in a row. And I love the way that they did that separated, because I was actually refreshing Twitter to see who was coming next. It was almost like that Vince McMahon meme where like each one was bigger than the last. So how are you guys feeling about those 6 signings that just dropped on Wednesday?
I mean, that day was so fun. I'm always joking about Athletico Ottawa should announce stuff Royal Rumble style, and this really felt like that on your WWE meme right there. But yeah, 6 hours. It was fun for fans. Making content was a little bit hard because it's kept on coming. But no, it was great. I mean, we started off at 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 6 players, especially after a couple of weeks of hearing nothing, which seems to be a trend in the CPL. But 6 great players. Like you said, each player just more hype than the other. And we're building a very strong team here. I'm so excited for the season to come.
Now, Eddie, from those 6, who's got people the most excited? Because you've got a couple players with really big names on there.
I think right now it's a tie between Bassett and Ingham. I think Bassett just because, well, he's the champion from last season, and Ingham because now we actually have a goalie and a goalie that's locked in long term. Palio's a great goalie, but there seem to be some, how to say, problems between, I guess, or lack of chemistry between the goalie and defenders. So hopefully a player like Ingham, we can rebuild that chemistry, especially bringing in new defenders, and hopefully restore that back line that we really need help on.
Yeah, you guys had a bit of trouble with the back line, especially in giving up penalties last season, especially.
Yeah, I mean, it seemed every other game there was a penalty. I think 11 or 12 penalties. It was bad. There was a severe lack of discipline. I'm not sure where that came from. Maybe the coach, maybe somewhere else. But hopefully this season we've learned a lesson and can be a little bit more disciplined in the back, because giving Morelli that many penalties just gave him that golden boot, and that really stings.
Well, speaking of coaching, I guess we can kind of close the book on the Mista chapter now. With the power of hindsight, looking back, how do you feel about how that all went with the inaugural coach and Mista's performance overall?
I think he was put in a tough position. The first season, he only had 7 games in the island bubble with a team that was made last minute. And then last season, again, it took him a little bit too long to change the tactics. I think towards the end of the season, he finally found what worked. And that's when he saw Ottawa getting a little bit more success, getting points here and more points than usual. But at the end of the day, I think he wasn't fit for the job. The Canadian game's a lot different than the Spanish game. And I just don't think he was ready yet. I mean, I heard at the time he was still learning how to speak English and stuff. So there obviously was a miscommunication. And I think if he came at a different time, maybe it would work. But it was tough for him and tough for Ottawa. The two parties didn't work out.
Now, with this coaching situation that you guys have on the go right now, does it feel weird to be drafting players and signing all these players without a coach in place?
Not really. I think we kind of see that in other sports, such as like NHL, where the coach doesn't really pick the players. It's more of a general manager. So I think in this team, I'm not quite sure. I think we do have a kind of general manager role. Maybe it's Fernando, maybe it's somewhere else, like scouting department Athletico, that's picking the players, and the coach is just the one that uses the players. So it's a little bit weird for soccer, but in different sports, it usually happens. So not that weird.
Now, you touched on the scouting role within the club, and with that, the draft just took place last week on Friday, and you guys picked up 2 players. Tell me a little bit about those players, because you guys have had a bit of time over at 613 Sports to get in and have a look at who you've brought in.
For sure. Jose de Cunha, center back from Cape Breton, was drafted by Forge but never played. He's a very impressive player. He played in Portugal. He grew up in Portugal, and he played for one of the academies there. I forgot which team. And he came to Ottawa. Well, he came to Canada, and has been really improving his game this past youth sports season. He's going to turn into a nice big center back who's also confident on the ball. And obviously, Ottawa is lacking in center back depth. So if we can mold him into something, he could be here for a long time. And then in the second round, we took Julian Bruce, which is a little bit off the board, which happened to be the theme of the whole draft. But this is a pick that really showing that Ottawa was doing their research. He plays in Montreal Carabins and plays in the PLSQ for CS Longueuil, which is the same team that Zach Baou plays for. So maybe there's something going on there. But he's a very fast and athletic left mid. He comes from Paris. He played in the PSG Academy. So this is a very, very good talent we have in our hands. And what I'm looking for now is to see if they actually sign players, because Ottawa hasn't signed any draft picks yet. Obviously, we had issues last season because of COVID. But if we can sign these 2 draft picks, it really show that Ottawa's focused on developing the youth.
Well, I know that John was curious about the size of the roster. So, John, I'll let you get into that.
Well, yeah. So by my count, there's still, a handful of roster spots left. So like when you look at that, who they've got so far and like kind of like the setup that they're looking at, like where to you are the missing pieces that still need to be filled?
For sure. So we obviously really focus on the midfield with these signings. I think, we had Baou, we had Aylman, we had Bassett, and then on the re-signings, we had McKendry, Manella. That's like 5 midfielders. So I don't think around the center midfield we need any more players, but we are kind of lacking on the wings. And I guess we can't really, it doesn't hurt to get more defensive depth, especially last season when we got injuries and suspensions and all this stuff. We were really lacking back there. So I think we're going to be focusing on the wing and the defense. And of course, we haven't signed really any new Spanish players other than Acosta. So I do expect a couple, maybe 2-3 Spanish players to come from the Madrid system. And maybe they'll complement the side more than just be the main piece like they were last season.
Now, as a member of the Capital City Supporters Group and the Capo, if you will, have you heard from within your community, within the fans and within just local citizens, any sort of interest building in the team? Because I get the impression that from the outside, a lot of people look in and go, well, does an organization based out of Madrid really care about what's going on in Ottawa, what the local citizen gives a rat's ass about, kind of deal? Is that kind of the vibe? Like, how are things working having an outside entity operating within your city? Are those connections really sincerely being built, do you think?
I think the connections are being built. I mean, first of all, not to toot our own horn, but Section W has been a very big marketing point towards casual fans in the city. With all the videos and energy like people are seeing, they want to come experience that. I've been told that a lot of people have been switching their season tickets to go to the Section Dub, which obviously means less money for the club, but better for us. So it's kind of helps for the casuals to come experience it. And as for developing ties, I think Athletico Ottawa is doing a pretty good job. They've created that program powered by Athletico Ottawa and have partnered with all the local clubs across the city. And last season, we did see them use OSU players to join the team. So I really don't think there's a problem with building local talent. I think they're building something there. What I do have a little bit of problem with is the marketing, which seems to be a huge problem. Ottawa's a government town, which means we're going to get a lot of immigrants who work in the government, and a lot of these immigrants love the game of football. So we should be going to these different areas around the city and heavily marketing that we have a club here. And for them, a club owned by Atletico Madrid might actually mean more than just a Canadian club, just based on their perception. So I think they need to go to Little Italy, the Chinatowns, and all these places, and just heavily market the game. Give some free tickets here and there. Not too much, because that's a problem the Fury suffered. But get them to the game, and once they're in there, get them hooked. And then that's how you build it properly versus just going around the casual route and just getting easy fixes to the solutions. We want to build an actual fan base here, not just casual fans who'll come here and there.
Now, Eddie, you and I were talking about this in the lead up before we started recording here, but as a Carleton student yourself, do you think there's a missed opportunity there in building relationships with the school? Because for me, it seems like a lock. Like, you guys did very well attendance-wise, and I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like Carleton home games are fairly decent as well. Is there potential there for the club, and maybe have they missed a step?
I think there's a huge potential. I mean, the Carleton alumni have their own supporters group, the Bronson Boys, who bring the energy. For nationals, it was crazy, electric, and there's a lot of potential there. I mean, Carleton is just down the road from TD Place. You walk down the street, and it's there. When I reached out to Carleton for a statement, they said that they have strong mutual respect for Athletico Ottawa, and the two parties have mutual respect for each other. But that doesn't really say that they have a strong relationship, and I don't know what kind of relationship they have, but it is a little bit confusing that, we haven't had a more public, stronger relationship with the team, with the school and the team. Perhaps it's something at play. We don't really know. But I think there has a huge opportunity there. If you can get Carleton students and University of Ottawa students to come to the games, that's a huge opportunity to get money and make some fans. Because at the end of the day, they want a party atmosphere. And that's what we bring to TD Place, a party atmosphere. So I think they're working on it, but the clock is ticking, and I think they need to really get on that before things kind of fall apart.
Do you find the atmosphere better at the U Sports final or at a Athletico Ottawa game? Because I've always wondered if maybe they made the wrong choice in playing at TD rather than at Carleton, because you have that gorgeous stand there set up that the Ravens play at. Just seems to make more sense to have everybody in a tighter space rather than spread out a huge stadium all in the bottom tier.
I feel like Nationals that weekend might have been a little bit better, but again, it's general admission at Carleton. It's packed. Security is also allowing anything. I think there were toilet papers being thrown on the field. People were bringing flares. So obviously for someone who enjoys that kind of electric atmosphere, it is better. But at the same time, Athletico Ottawa, we give a very good atmosphere in Section W. I can't speak for the other sections down the place. But I know in Section W and around, it's a very electric atmosphere with the smokes and drums, and it can really compete. I think Athletico Ottawa chose TD Place because they do have the multiple sections, so different revenue streams, right? The middle is a little bit more expensive, more, posh and stuff like that. So that's probably coming in business wise. The lower bowl is kind of similar though to just a grandstand because it's just at the bottom, right? And it's just all across one side, not like everyone's all over the place. So I feel though, like if we can just get more people engaged in the games, it can quickly become an electric atmosphere across many sections. I know this season, Capital City is going to be focusing on trying to get more people engaged just a couple sections down. And that's how it grows. The more people are getting it, it's just like a domino effect. And eventually, I think we can get there where it's going to be hype every section, all game, all year round.
Do you feel like adding a former Fury player or two has helped or should help with rebuilding those connections?
There was a huge breakup when the Fury left. And some of the supporters groups didn't like it. And obviously when Atletico Ottawa came, all they saw was Madrid coming here, making maybe, a Red Bull team, right? Or one of those teams we see. And the team has done a very good job of showing that they're here to listen to the fans and to want to grow a fan base properly. Right away, they gave us the Section W back and stuff. But there are some people who really, really were hurt by the Fury being taken away. And it's taken them longer to come switch to the team. So I think adding a couple of Fury players can help them come in. And at the end of the day, if they don't come in after Fury players are added, I don't think they're going to come in at all. But throwing Tiso, Manila, Becky, I love that. As a Fury fan and a Ottawa fan, something to hate about that. It really meshes the two teams together and shows that, hey, like soccer is not dead in the city. Let's just keep the train going. Yes, it's a different team, but hey, let's be thankful we have a team. Look what's going on in Edmonton. It's like put our differences aside. Yes, the Fury, what happened was bad, but we move on. We have a new team. Let's go out and support it. And that's what I need to tell them.
Yeah, John, go ahead.
Oh,
Put him on the spot here.
My question next was the one you just asked, the Fury, like the former Fury players. So like, I guess kind of building on that, like you've kind of touched on that, but like, so you've lost some, like what percentage of the group of like the supporters group is kind of like coming over from being Fury supporters before, and how many of them are kind of like new to supporting a soccer team in this city?
So Stony Monday Riot and Bytown Boys were there for Fury and the teams before the Fury. And when CPL was launched and Fury didn't join right away, I think, I don't know which, Stony Monday Riot kind of fell off a little bit. They were still there around, but not by the numbers. They were really, really mad Fury didn't join the CPL. So there's still Bytown Boys, Stony Monday Riot, but Capital City was brand new, just launched for Athletico Ottawa, and that's Athletico Ottawa only. And we've seen a lot of new people joining Capital City. Every day we're getting new members. I don't know exactly what numbers, but we're in the hundreds, I think, right now of members. So it's a lot more, I believe, than the other supporters groups have, but I can't be quoted. I don't know how many they do have. But I do know that we work closely with the Bytown Boys on game days. They are fantastic, talented drummers, and they have some great chants too. So we work closely with them on game day. So it's good to see that they're here. I'm hoping Stony Monday Riot start showing up back in the numbers they have, because they were also a strong force. But yeah, it's just 3 groups now. Capital City. We're the ones that launched with the club, and it's been a pretty fun ride so far.
Well, Eddie, we want to thank you so much for joining us, and we hope to be able to follow along this ride with you as it continues. So I'll be following along as I have been the last little bit with you guys, and I look forward to seeing what comes up next for you.
For sure. Looking forward to the season. Allez les Rouges, allez.
All right, friends, thank you so much for sticking with the show here. We're back with our second guest of the day, Kevin McGreskin. He's most recently been on the staff with the Club America women's team down in Mexico. He's got experience with the Cook Islands national program. Back in Scotland, he's worked with Forfar and Dundee. I got to meet him when he was with the Burlington Soccer Club here in Canada. He's returned back to Burlington recently, and he's joining us now. We're lucky to have him here. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us, and we can't wait to really get into some questions. I know John's itching here, dying to ask you something off the top of his head because I know he was excited
Sure.
when he heard you were coming to join
Well,
us.
it's been a big discussion piece, like recently in the game, just like that we need to get something going for a professional women's league in Canada. And I was just wondering about your experience in Mexico because they got things off the ground, I think about 5 years ago. And is there anything that they're doing right that you would say like we need to try to emulate based on their structure there?
It's a great question. Yeah, they're doing a huge amount right. You know, it's absolutely fantastic set up down there. The teams, the clubs have really invested in the women's side of the game, which is fantastic. Like for example, at Club America, we had 26 full-time professional football players signed up. We had staff-wise on the women's side full-time. We had a sporting director, a team manager who organised the logistics, our head coach, 2 assistant coaches, goalkeeping coach, 2 fitness coaches, a doctor, a nutritionist, a physio, and 2 kitmen. Plus we had PR people that worked with us primarily full-time as well, and psychologists. And that's Club America. You know, I'm not saying every club down there has got that, but you look at that amount of squad and full-time staff to support the women's game. That I think that's tremendous. You know, you've got to applaud the club. But I think you've got to applaud all the clubs in Mexico for what they're doing and where they're trying to take the women's game and professionalise it. You know, it's still in its infancy stages. You know, like you say, 5 years in progress or so. But they're doing a lot of tremendous stuff down there, and it's really moving it in the right direction. So it's fantastic to see. It's fantastic to see the commitment from the clubs and the clubs owners. You know that you know, because they're investing a lot of money into to try and move this forward and give the female players the opportunities that they deserve to showcase their talents.
Now, Kevin, you'd said to me previously that if you were a young woman in North America, you'd be eyeing the Mexican League as a place to go. Now, with your experience that you've also had back in the UK, I'm curious because in my conversations, in my readings with people in the UK about the development of the women's programming there isn't necessarily a direct connection between the training facilities that the men and the women are each individually as teams given access to. Is that the same case in Mexico, or are the women allowed to have access to the exact same facilities as the men?
Well, I mean, I can only speak for Club America and a little insight to kind of what I experienced being out there when playing away from home and that kind of thing. But at Club America, fully integrated. It's a fully integrated club. So we share the same training base. We have a field. The men's first team have 2 largely, one certainly dedicated training field, grass field to them. They have a second field that's, let's say, primarily dedicated to them, but can be used by other teams if they book appropriately in advance, and if the head coach of the men's team feels okay about it. You know, he, like Solari, kind of had a veto if he felt that field would maybe get damaged too much in preparation for their games coming up. But we had a grass field that was primarily our use, but the men's under 20s did train on there as well. But we took priority on that field. And then they had 2 full-size turf fields as well. And the turf fields got shared, particularly if there was bad weather. We might need to move on there to train, but again, we would take priority over maybe the academy sides and some of the other sides on the men's side of things. So it was fully integrated. We would use, there was a main gym on site, and we had full access to that. Again, there was a pecking order, a priority where the men's team would get get their allocation first. But then we would get our allocation next, and then all the other teams that wanted access could get access after that. And we had, I mean, the gym the gym facilities were fantastic. We had a football not there. That's $1 million piece of kit. So fully integrated as much as I could say. I mean, does that mean to say that things run perfectly? Of course not, because day-to-day life doesn't run perfect. But from what I could see with the other clubs, very much the same. They're really working hard to try and make it a one club approach, which is really good.
Now, I watched an interview the other day with the men's coach from Santos Laguna. Is it Pedro Caxa? I think his name is.
Mm-hmm.
He was talking about his time at Rangers, and it was a great conversation. But he was talking about how Mexican players don't necessarily make it to Europe because there's no visibility for them. And then I listened to the odd women's football pod from the UK, and they're constantly talking about how, there's a ton of players in Mexico that could do a job in the women's league in England. Do you think that's true? Is there that influx of talent, or do you think there will be, because you're telling me they've got a football knot? That just blew my mind, because I know Schalke and Dortmund have them, but I'm convinced that's the next step in technical development. And I know you're a gadgets guy, but do you think we'll get back to this, but do you think there is an oncoming rush of Mexican players that will be of that level, or are they already there yet for the women? Like, what do you?
There's certainly a few that are there. I wouldn't say that there's a mass of them, but there's a few good quality players, and there's a few really taking advantage of the environment that they're being offered to train full time in good facilities with good coaches. And remember, as John said, the league's still in its infancy, so it's growing as more and more young girls are seeing these role models ahead of them. They're aspiring to play professional football because they can see it's an attainable goal, and therefore there is going to become more talent coming from there. But they have a tremendous footballing culture down there, and that, again, one club mentality. The fans for the female side are every bit as enthusiastic about the team as they are for the men's side, and it's not like largely people only support the women's team. It will be fans of the men's team will come along to watch the women's game. Yep, they will get smaller crowds, of course, but they're every bit as enthusiastic. You could hear them singing throughout the game, the way they welcome the team buses with the flares and the flags, and the bus can hardly move as you're going into the big games. There's a real enthusiasm for it. So that, to me, that will motivate and inspire young girls to really throw themselves into being the best they can be, because they can see that playing professional football is a viable career option. So you're going to get that. If those routes are available, you will ultimately get an increasing amount of talent coming through, and they love the game, and that's the important thing. They love the game, and then that will, talent and ability can follow that. If you don't love the game, doesn't matter how much you go and play, the chances of you reaching the top level become quite slim.
As someone who's seen the level of talent here in Canada and in Mexico, how would you compare the two? Is it similar, or is one country developing the other at this stage, would you say, on the women's side?
I think there's a lot on the women's side. There's a lot of tremendous talent in this country, and we're one of the biggest challenges. It's like everything in football. It's the geography. It's the logistics, organising that with such a huge landmass. But there's tremendous talent up here and especially with young players that are coming through the system just now. That's really gets you excited about what's going to happen. The women's team just won the gold medal at the Olympics, and that in itself will further increase the motivation of young female players in the country, and hopefully get more people wanting to watch the game and go to the games, the national team games, and support the women's programs and girls programs at all levels to really give the young talents the opportunities and the pathways to try and achieve their goals. But there's a lot of talent here that where Mexico is lucky just now is they've got that professional league, and it's really something that a country like Canada should, I do strongly believe they should try and implement. Now, how to implement it, that is a challenge again because of the logistics of the country. But they certainly need it here if we're really going to provide the Canadian players, and especially the young Canadian players, the opportunity to grow, develop, and have a platform to showcase their skills. Now, that might mean they then venture further afield and play in Europe, like we've had some of the flag bearers for that, the players that are over there playing in Europe just now, that want to test themselves at the perceived highest level. But that's great. But below that, we've got to provide them a platform where they could really develop and grow and see football or soccer as a viable career option. And we need to do that here. And I think it would be great, obviously you've got the MLS and the Canadian teams in there. So could that be replicated in the NWSL? I think so. But at the same time, we've really got to be looking at a Canadian league, one for this country, for the players in this country to help them grow.
That was some wonderful tiptoeing there, Kevin, around actually saying whether Canada or Mexico are putting out better players right now, but I'll accept it. So I want you to tell me about a player that you saw close up, eye to eye. I'm sure you've chatted with him a time or two. I know our fans on the West Coast are really excited about him, but Ryan Gauld, you were at Dundee with him. Tell us a little bit about what set that player apart as a young man from the rest of the players around him, because you'd have seen him before he really, really became the polished player that we're starting to see now, right?
Yeah, and you've just dropped yourself in it a wee bit for any listeners that are enthusiastic about this, because he was at Dundee United, not Dundee, so I need to get that right. No, he was a smashing young player. Broke through into the team, and Jackie gave him a real opportunity in the side, and he grabbed it with both hands. He was young, vibrant, exciting. He got branded as the Scottish Messi, which obviously is can work two ways. But he was great. He had this mentality that he wanted to learn and grow. He always embraced things. Even things like, I took him to the ground at Tannadice after training. We would go underneath the stand at Tannadice and do a little bit of work there, ball on the wall stuff. And he was enthusiastic about trying it. He was always willing to give something a go if, it would test him or challenge him. And he was good. And in training, he was great. He got opportunity in the first team and never let the side down. Provided, scored a few important goals and created a few important goals as well. So you could see that at that young age that he really had the chance to go and make his way in the game. And he earned a big move to Portugal, and he fans it. I thought that was fantastic. Such a young player willing to go to another country, and you don't often get that in the UK. Players like to stay in the UK, or Scottish players largely maybe like to stay in Scotland, or if they get the chance to go to England because it's perceived to be bigger, more money, etc. But he took an opportunity to go to Portugal and learn a new culture, learn a new language. So it just shows the mentality of the guy, that he's willing to embrace learning to really grow as a person and a player.
Do you think that mentality is starting to change with especially players from Scotland, but across the UK? Because I see these reports come out and they talk about, how many players go through academies and don't make the first team and then drop out of football, and then they're uneducated and they have no prospects. But it strikes me that a fair few of these players could go overseas if the mood struck them and get paid. what do you think causes that hesitancy?
I don't know. I think they see the opportunity to try and play in Scotland at the highest level, or play in England at the highest level they can. That's where they're maybe going to be in the public eye to, further their career the best they can, or maybe that's the only thing on the only bit of landscape you can see. But like you say, mentalities are changing. You are starting to. There's always been the odd player here and there, but they've been in the minority, and I think more players should be open to the opportunity of testing themselves overseas if that's what's going to give them an opportunity to realise their dreams of becoming a professional football player. It's too often, I suppose, is it they stay in a comfort zone where they just want to stay in their own country. Like, English is spoken in a lot of countries around the world, but that could seem like a daunting prospect. Like me going to Mexico and coaching in the women's professional league down there with Craig. We need to go there and try and embrace learning a new language. And certainly at my age, that's quite a scary thought, but it was one that I embraced, to try and help me grow as a person. But as a young player, maybe moving away from home, a different language, all those challenges, maybe it's understandable that try and exhaust opportunities closer to home before they then go there. And I would say, maybe go there first. Be brave. Go out, give it a go, and see how it pans out.
Well, you might have just touched on it actually, but I was curious because in your career you are pretty well traveled. You've got the experience in Scotland, the Caribbean, Canada, now Mexico. This could even be on a personal level or on the institutional level, but like, what was the biggest culture shock in Mexico City for you?
Are you on about in football in terms or lifestyle?
It could be anything really. Like what kind of like really threw a curveball for you when you got to Mexico City?
The traffic. No. No, honestly, I thought Mexico City was amazing. From the moment I got there, I loved it. Honestly, I loved it. I would say there's the only thing in football in terms in soccer terms that I would say that not so much a curveball. It is a curveball. Getting used to the fact that players will go down and stay down and be happy to get taken off the field, even when I perceive that there's nothing the matter with them. And they are like me and Craig, we would look at ball and play time, and it was ridiculous. You were getting games, ball and play time was 40 minutes because of the amount of time wasting that was going on. And so that becomes frustrating. But what you need to try and embrace is that's, and I don't mean it in a demeanour, it's part of the footballing culture there. People go down, they stay down, they're looking for free kicks, they'll run down the clock, and it seems to be an accepted part of the game. For me, I don't like it, but if that's how the game's played, then there's a foreigner going into another country. You need to adapt. You can't go in expecting another country to adapt to you. But what you can try and do is influence the players that you're working with, because we showed them a couple of times. Players went off when there was nothing the matter with them, really, right? Because they've been taken off and they've come straight back on the pitch. But twice, when they've come back on, it's been a kick-off because we're kicking off because we've lost the goal, because we're down to 10 players. I was like, well, we can't have players at the game like that. I'm like, no, if you're injured, you're injured. But So that, and the amount of time wasting that goes on, even you see at the start of the game. I mean, you're in the first minute, and the goalkeepers are taking forever over a goal kick. Honestly, they're running down the clock from the first minute at a goal kick, and it's like, so that trying to adapt to that and going, well, let's just play the game. And I'm not just on about the women's. Obviously, I was closely involved with the women's, but you're going out and watching the men's game. It's the same thing. The same thing's happening. So it seems to be an accepted part of how you play the game. For me, I'd rather have the ball and play far more. So, and as a club, as a coaching staff, we try to promote that in the team. Look, don't stay down, get up. If you can, if you're injured and you need treatment, stay down, we'll get you treatment. That's okay. But if you're really okay to get up and continue. Get the play, like throw-ins. Can we get throw-ins done? Take them quickly. Get the ball back in play as quick as you can. So I don't know if it's a curveball really, but adapting to that side of things where we want to try and get things going quickly, and they're happy to take things slow. And I suppose I could. I'm going to meander off and talk here, but I could take that just to eat a simple meal. Like I would often laugh with share a joke with the Mexican coaches at the club, and would be sitting at lunch and chatting, and they'd be taking forever because it's a real social thing for them. Like they sit down, have a meal, a little chat, blah blah, in the canteen at the club, and boom, chat, and there I've finished my meal. So they like taking time with things, So whereas me, I'm hurry. So I'm not saying I'm right and they're wrong. I'm just that, different. When you go to a new culture, you need to adapt to the pace of life. So that's the only curveball I could think of, really.
So Kevin, it sounds like you're putting a real emphasis on time here.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to understand the importance of 53.4 seconds.
53.4 seconds. Now that's time. You might be surprised. There was a study by Carlin back in. I think this goes back to 2010, and there's been a couple of other studies. And timings might be slightly different, but in an average in a game in this study, it was done in League One, so at the professional level in France, the top league, and it showed that players were on the ball in a 90-minute game on average 53.4 seconds of the game, right? So that's an average across the players. Some players a bit more, some players a bit less, but 53.4 seconds of the game is when you will actually physically be in possession of the ball. And so for me, that and with that as well, the average amount of times you get the ball was about 47 times. The average amount of time on the ball at any one time, 1.1 seconds. And you would average was 2 touches. And again, they're averages. We need to bear that in mind. But it just shows you, for me, if you want to be effective, it shows you how important the stuff that you do off the ball and prior to being involved with the ball is to being effective when you actually do have the ball, because you've got so much your time is so limited when you have it. You really have got to know what you're going to do with the ball before you get it. And as coaches, we often say that to players. You've got to know what you're going to do before you get it. But studies show that actually maybe a lot of players don't know as well as they should do before they get the ball.
So you're on a mission to help those players and help those coaches instill that thought process in those players. You've written yourself a book here called Scanning. Tell me why that was so important for you to do, to put pen to paper here.
It's important because it's been a passion of mine for 20 years in coaching. I've loved coaching, but this aspect of performance is something that's been a passion of mine for years. And I've been lucky to work with a lot of good people. And I've delivered, I've done a lot of work with Irish FA, where I've delivered under UEFA courses, their pro license, their A license, their B license courses at various times. I've even been in Croatia and delivered on their A license and pro license courses about this topic. And it's so fundamentally important to performance, and it's something that isn't coached or developed enough, I think. And it's a trainable skill. We've got to, if we want players to be good decision makers, we've got to help them be able to take in the information that's required to make those decisions. And the research has shown those that scan the most tend to be the most effective with the ball. Now, that's not to say it's everything. It's just one part of the puzzle. It's just one of these other things that's important to overall performance. So you still need the technical and the physical component to go with it. But scanning is so hugely important. And, I watch games at all levels, and you still see those that do it a lot and those that do it not so much. And that's not to say when you're watching play, because I can watch an international game, I can watch a top level game in England, a top level game in any country, and I'll be able to pick out players that could scan more. And that's not to say that these are bad players, but from a coaching perspective, they are very, very good players. It's how can we help them be even better? So that's my mentality. And it's a trainable skill. So let's help players be even better.
Now, for me, I look at this and I go, okay, well, John's your typical example of this. I've watched him play once. Gets the ball, is looking down at the ball, looks up, and then makes a decision. And that's essentially where the problem occurs, yeah? Because he's not got a vision of what's going on around him.
Mm-hmm.
Quick as a dart, fast as heck, especially when he's playing guys a decade older than him, and I get it. But we're saying John's game could be better if his head was up and looking around before he gets the ball, yeah?
Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know how much we could really help John, but no.
I need more than just a little coaching. Yeah.
No, you can help everybody improve on that aspect. And I think, the more you look off the ball and scan your surroundings, and then there's intricacies of when you scan, where you scan, etc. We get that, but fundamentally, players at the beginning, they don't scan enough. So we need to help them have the behaviour to scan more frequently. And as players grow and develop, and depending on what team they're in, what game they're playing, etc., we can help them skillfully guide those scans. But we need to get them into the habit of scanning more frequently, off the ball and out of possession. So that's whether that's individual possession or team possession. So when they are off the ball, they should scan more frequently to prepare themselves for on the ball. What players tend to do is watch the ball, receive the ball, then have a look. And that's the wrong order. The process is wrong there. They should be scanning and moving, preparing themselves to receive the ball so they can have maximum effectiveness and efficiency whenever they get the ball. And if we can help them do that, they will be better players for it, or they have the opportunity to be better players for it. You know, ultimately they still need to be the decision maker there and then, but they will now have good information to make decisions on. And as coaches, we often say it to players, but what I hear is the most common way that is coaches will coach it is they'll say to the player, remember, check your shoulder. And sort of that's not good enough. And somebody I worked with once said, well, you know, if it's that easy just to tell them, then just tell the players to go out and score goals. You know, so go out and score goals. If it's easy enough just to say, check your shoulder, and that solves all the problems. Me, I'm a big believer, players develop as the environment demands development. So if we would like them to have scanning as an excellent behaviour on the field of play, we've got to create training environments that promote the level of scanning or more that's required in the game.
Well, Kevin, thank you so much for joining us and providing these incredible insights and sharing with us this bit of knowledge that you've so eloquently put into a whole book for anybody who's looking for it. It is available on bookdepository.com. It's called Scanning by Kevin McGreskin. And yeah, Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with us.
No, thanks very much for having me on.
All right, guys, thank you so much for joining us here for this final installment of Canadian Footy Corner. It is January 28th, which means we're coming up quickly on this Canada-US game, which is what all the buzz is about right now. There was a little bit of buzz, though, this week with a couple other news things, which we're going to get to first before we close off with this Canada-US thing. There's a surprise on the training camp roster for TFC. I'll let you get into that one real quick here, John.
Yeah, well, the Twitter was ablaze yesterday morning. TFC announced its roster for its training camp, and there was a few names you didn't expect, but there was one name in particular that surprised some people, Sebastian Giovinco, training with the team, and they even had to pull down the original post and put up a new one because they didn't put a little asterisk beside his name, which so people were already speculating if that was a done deal. But he's just been invited to train. But I mean, that's something to keep an eye on, because I think like it's one of those things where with Insigne too, where it's just like the rumor just won't die, right? And now he's actually just with the team at training camp. So maybe he's just training and that's all it is. And maybe there's something more there, because he's said he's willing to take that pay cut. That seems to be like one of the big hurdles there. So, and there's quotes from Bill Manning talking about, you know, him meeting Bob and seeing where the fit is and if there's a fit. So, I mean, it's a conversation they're having. And it just, like, seeing him in the colors again, I couldn't help but be a little giddy just seeing it. You know, the smile on his face. He's wearing the TFC gear. Like, even if nothing comes of it, it's still kind of cool.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it's just a testament to what the scene is like here in Toronto, because he loves the idea. He wants to retire here. He wants to be a part of what's going on culturally here in this area. And probably one of the bigger announcements, I think, as far as soccer culture goes here, is what came out from League One earlier this week, with the addition of promotion and relegation, amongst other things. They're going to be reintroducing the Cup back in 2024 as well. But it's going to create the actual pyramid that we've been begging for as soccer fans for quite some time now.
Well, yeah, like the promotion relegation system is something that there's been a pretty vocal desire in the community, that's something that kind of gives a great sense of, you know, the purity of the competition, that you have that risk that you can go up and down. It also it provides opportunities to start, you know, at maybe a lower level as well. So there's going to be 3 divisions: the Premier, the Championship, and then League Two, and with a team moving up and down in between each season. And then they're keeping that Canadian Championship spot on the men's side in the Premier Division. So, I mean, and that starts in 2024. So that's I mean, that's only exciting for League One Ontario, right?
Yeah, it's, as a big proponent of what the value to our national system is, I think League One Ontario, League One BC, PLSQ are vitally important to everything. We look at how many players on the national team right now have experience playing in League One Ontario, and I think it's more than 10, I want to say. Something.
Yeah, I mean,
something,
we're seeing
something in
the
that
fruits
range
of the labor, yeah.
Yeah, even if it is just for a few games here and there, it's still part of that developmental process, which I think is absolutely pivotal. But we're going to finish things off here really quickly, talking about the end result, where things lead, because we can't stop talking about this Canadian men's national team. And are you expecting to see Eustachio in the starting lineup?
Well, that's the funny thing, right? Because earlier in the week, everyone was disappointed because, you know, there's these reports out of Portugal. He's got COVID, or he's tested positive for COVID. And then new reports come out that, you know, maybe with the quarantine time being only 5 days, maybe. And then he's included with the roster. So they're like, are they looking forward to the El Salvador match? Do you think he could make an appearance on Sunday? I mean, if he does, that's a huge boost. It's one of those wait and see things, but I mean, they wouldn't include him in the roster if they didn't think that they could actually get at least one game out of him in this window. So, I mean, and that being said, like, the Piet came in and did a fantastic job on last night. There's definitely going to be, you got to think that there'll be at least a little bit of rejigging things a little around. But I mean, maybe Richie was on the bench last night. Maybe he gets a start in place. But I mean, who knows? But if Acquisio's there, that's massive help against USA.
Sorry, who?
Acquisio. I always mess up these names.
Eustachio.
Eustachio.
Jeez Louise. Yeah, excuse you, sir. John's already halfway out the door here. He's got his mind on the cottage. John's.
But I'll be back in time on Sunday. Well, I'm gonna be up north for the weekend, but then last minute, because me and my dad did not get tickets in the original window, but we found a way. So I will be there on Sunday in the cold to watch the game. So I'm excited for that.
I'll be there in the warmth of the press box, so no concerns for me, friends. I'll be A-okay. And I hope to see a couple friendly faces, and we hope to see you guys all back next week for our next edition of Canadian Footy Corner.
Canadian Footy Corner.